everybody, and welcome to Cabaret Secrets. This is Gary Williams, and joining me today is João Wolf, a cruise director. Hi, João. Welcome to Cabaret Secrets.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us, anybody that's listening who doesn't know, what is a cruise director? What are the responsibilities?
A cruise director on a cruise ship, of course, it's responsible for all the entertainment program on board. That includes entertainment in the theater, of course, all the music all around the ship, activities for both adults and children and teenagers, anything that has to do with fun and keeping the guests entertained and busy. Also, of course, television programming, all that kind of stuff. It's under the supervision of the cruise director. And how does that impact the entertainers? Like, of course, when they come on board, they should know in advance also the type of demographics and the product the people are expecting to be delivered to. Because many times what happens is people come on board without knowing the audience.
Entertainers, you mean?
Yeah, the entertainers, they come on board, and even the activity staff, people sometimes they come on board not knowing to whom they're going to be talking to whom they're going to be delivering their performances. And I think it's really it's the main factor. The challenge now is to find people who can communicate to the various demographics, honestly. So
demographic or nationalities as well?
Yeah, sorry. What I mean by demographics is the age and nationalities.
Right. And when you say communicate, is it just about language, being able to communicate in different languages, or do you mean just kind of understand what they like?
Both. It's connecting, actually. Doesn't have to be necessarily to speak the language, but being able to connect with those people. And this is the main challenge. And I think more and more the company is trying to book entertainers who can connect to a wider variety of people. Because, for example, here in Brazil, majority of the crowd is Brazilians, but you get international guests here as well, who, if they don't get to experience the product, what's the point of them being here, right? And it gets worse when you get, for example, to Europe, where you have a third of Spanish.
Into Europe.
Yeah, let's say we are in Europe right now, so we would have a third of Spanish guests, another third of American, British, English-speaking guests, another third of German, Italian, French guests. How do you connect with all those people at the same time? The more international the act is, the more people you're going to reach with that. The less international, the more difficult it is to connect to the majority.
What kind of acts work best for you? What kind of acts are you looking for as a cruise director when you see certain entertainers come on? What kind of acts are you looking for that you think, they're going to do a good job?
Again, it depends. For example, for European season, I would say that the entertainer should speak at least English and Spanish, because they will always have many people who speak those two languages. But the more visual, the less they have to actually talk on stage, the better. But if they do have to talk, they should be able to communicate, but which is really, really hard, because, for example, I feel that every day when I have to introduce a show, or even better, when I'm trying to make jokes on stage, right? Most of the cruise directors, they have the top 10, for example, at the end, the top 10
silly questions
that the guests ask. When I can do it in only one language, it works perfect. Everybody's laughing, having a great time. The timing for comedy is perfect. When you have to do in two languages, you have to rethink the whole thing.
I find in that situation, I can't just, if I translate everything verbatim, particularly with a joke, it's impossible, because you'll tell the joke, you get the punchline, you know that some of the Spanish-speaking people can speak some English, so they kind of half got it, so then you do it in Spanish, and so it's never going to get the same laugh, and then the English-speaking people kind of know that you're telling the joke, so they're sitting there bored, and so I find, the way I get around it is that I try not to repeat this, I try and do one bit of business in one language, and then I might sing a song, and then do something else for the Spanish speakers, in their language, and then sing another song. But trying to translate everything into 2 or 3 languages.
What you're saying is perfect, because that's exactly what I was talking about. You need to think out of the box completely and rethink the whole thing that you're doing. It's not only translating. And that your example is perfect. But not everybody is capable of doing that, and not everybody cares enough to do that. They just translate, and that's the biggest challenge. And very few people have the creativity, and again the will to actually think their crowd as a whole. And how do I balance this out in the act in a way that you don't bore people? Which is it's an art.
You know, my background is in sales, and I learned a long time ago that if I want to sell something, the first thing I need to do is ask what people want to buy, right? Because most people say, well, here's my great product and it's amazing and you should buy this thing, but that person might already have one, or they might not be interested in that product at all. The best thing to do first is say, what do you want? Where is the need? What do you need? And okay, and then I'm going to sell you that thing. And I see this a lot in entertainers, that they can juggle, or that they can sing musical theatre or big band or whatever it is. And hey, here I am. I'm brilliant at this thing. Who wants to buy me? Come on, book me. Put me on your ship because I'm great. And well, we don't really need that now. The first question is, what does a big major cruise line like Royal Caribbean want? What are they booking? And the acts that are in demand, from what you say and from what I see, are particularly those that can appeal to an international crowd, that can speak a little bit of, at least, English and a little bit of Spanish and maybe another language as well. So if there are any acts out there, or people out there that want to get work, this is what they need to do. They need to go away and learn their act in another language, and then they've got a much better chance of being in demand, right?
I believe so too. It's like, for example, just to give you an example, a magic show, right? An illusionist who puts together a show that it's mostly visual. Everybody in the world, most of the people like magic. It appeals to the whole family, people of all ages. So a magic act, in theory, it's perfect. But then you get those magicians who talk a lot. And then,
because their tricks are rubbish.
Exactly. Well,
maybe. I'm just kidding.
Probably.
They don't call them tricks, right? But they're illusions.
But you see, so it loses the whole point of being a visual act.
Right.
So the more, it doesn't have to be visual. It's like, if you don't
Let's talk about singers, because most people listening to this are singers.
Exactly what I was going to say. Let's take your act as an example. Like, you're a singer. You're not doing juggling, you're not doing any visual effects or anything. But music is international on its own. Like, music is the songs people usually sing on this type of show. They're songs that most of the people would, in theory, know. So the language barrier is not there. But if you know the crowd you're performing to, you will do little things to please them. And once you've pleased them, especially at the beginning of the show, and you have them in the palm of your hand, you can do whatever you want. But you need to show them that you care. It's like big international acts go to Brazil. Of course, they're always going to say a couple of words in Portuguese. Hey, hello, like in Portuguese. That's it. And then, they cared about me. They cared about learning a couple of lines in Portuguese. So, and then they will enjoy the rest of the show. But if they go on stage and they create this barrier in between, this wall, they will enjoy less. And I think, taking your act as an example, like when I first heard, if you don't mind me telling this story, when I first heard that you were coming here, and we had only one experience together the previous year, where you had come on board for the crossing and did a very straightforward singing show, if I can remember.
The normal act, yeah.
The normal act.
And a crossing is when the ship's basically repositioning from Europe over to Brazil, and there's a kind of a mixed crowd.
Yeah. So I was fine.
So my normal. Kind of my American kind of English show.
Yeah. So it was perfect for that kind of cruise. But then when I learned that you were booked for the Brazilian season...
The whole season,
I really didn't get it. I didn't understand. I said, what the hell?
You didn't want me, did you?
I didn't want you at all. But you did what all the entertainers should do, which is study. Like, you learned, you cared about the people you are going to be performing to enough to go deep into their culture and see what is that, what is it that I can adapt on my show to make it fit, to make it perfect for this crowd. And because again, people like international stars, right? If you're an international star, international singer, they're gonna like it. However, how do you connect? And then what did you do? You added Brazilian songs, you added some stories about how you like Brazilian music, which I still don't believe that they're true.
Does it matter?
That's the whole point. It does not matter, right? So
it's okay to lie.
Entertainment is all about lying to the people, and people who come watch a show, they want to be lied to, right? They're expecting to be deceived in some.
Yeah, I read a quote the other day from Benny Hill, this old, you know Benny Hill, it was a British comedian, very funny, but he said show business is sincere in sincerity. And I think that's kind of it, because of course it's a show, it's a fake,
of course.
But if you've got to really kind of make the audience believe that you really feel it, because if they
want to believe,
of course,
that's what they're there for. They want to be. It's like when you go watch a play, but of course it's a little bit different, because when you go see a play, you know they're acting, right? But when you go see like a singing act or whatever act you go see, a comedy act, whatever, you're there to be entertained. So your first reaction is to be open for what the entertainer is going to do. So you are the one who can close the door at the very beginning of the show. If you close that door and you lose them, that's it. But now let me tell you something. On cruise ships, it could be a little bit different, because let's say I'm on land. I'll go see your show. First of all, there's a very good chance that I know you. That's why I'm paying to see your show. I kind of know what I'm
taking a whole evening out.
Yeah,
it's
so
expensive.
What are we gonna do? Oh, let's go see whoever. On a cruise ship, when they come on board, they have no idea what type of entertainment they're gonna find.
Yeah.
So sometimes they go see a show in a very bureaucratic way, if you know what I mean. It's just like on their schedule. Okay, so after dinner we have this show to go. So it could be a little more difficult, because the crowd is not there for you. They have no idea who you are. But on the other hand, you can take advantage of that, because since they're expecting anything, whatever you do at the beginning, it could be that's when they're gonna choose, even though they don't know it, but they're gonna choose if they're gonna like your show or not from the very beginning. So if you can connect to these people at the beginning somehow.
And of course, if they don't really like it, they'll just leave, because they didn't pay anything for it. There's probably 3 other things they could do at that very moment going on the ship. So I think, you know what, let's go play a quiz show instead. Let's go watch that other thing. Let's go dance to the band somewhere else, because so they can. But if they like it, they'll stay, right?
Yeah, that's true. So there's always advantages and disadvantages. But I think the good thing is you have a very good opportunity to. Because they don't have any preconceptions, either good or bad, about you, unless they have seen you before on the show.
And also that means that the show has to have a wide appeal to as many people as possible, right? You can't be too focused, I don't think, in whatever you're doing, because, like you say, on land, if somebody knows that I'm going to sing jazz, or they know that they're going to see a classical recital, they know what they're going to get, they're going to pay for that. But on a ship, it could be anything. Or even the same applies on land at a corporate event. If I go and entertain people at a corporate party or at a wedding or something, they've not come to see me. I've come to see them. Yeah. And I've got to make sure that I appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And on cruise ships, I think it's even more than like this, because you have people from many different backgrounds, like different religious backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, all different ages, and they're all together. Throughout your show, you're going to see that people will react better to this and to that, and they're going to like... But as the show goes on, the mass... Maybe you know what I'm talking... Probably you know what I'm talking about. As the show goes on, they get more they behave more like a crowd. It's funny, like how entertainment can bring these people with such different backgrounds together, and they behave the same at some point. Towards the end of the cruise, for example, You know what I'm saying? Like at the beginning, you see the differences so much, and as the cruise progresses, they behave more alike. I hope you can use this as a lesson as well. Gary Williams has updated his show for the 2013 Brazilian season with the new Brazilian hits that I was really amazing to learn that he knew all about it. So, because we have a lot of guests who come back, and it's great that you cared enough to update your show, and like the guests who are watching the show for the second time, they get this big surprise. Wow, I thought I was gonna come and see this, the same thing I saw last year. However, it's still the same, however completely different. And I think it's a big wow for the guests when they get to see that look, this guy really cared enough to work on his show and make it better and make it new without changing completely. You don't have to do a full new show. You just need to care enough to see what's going on now. What can I do to please the guests who are coming back to see my show once again? Which you cannot do on land because, it's different. You can do it, but...
Yeah, you can. I do it online. If I go to the same venues every year or twice a year, I wish I didn't have to, but it's hard. I've been going to the same venues for years, some places, and I have to keep... we all do what we do, but you think, well, I can't keep using the same gags. And
comes a time when you feel the need to
every year, really, to some degree. Of course, the core stays the same, but you think, God, I'm always embarrassed if I see the same people coming to my shows, every 6 months or a year after year, and I see them there, and I think, oh, I'm just about to start that joke I've been telling for the last 3 years. I think I can't do it. You got to change it, but it's good because it keeps you finding new material and keeps you fresh, keeps you working. I enjoy that challenge of finding new stuff. Otherwise it gets boring, right?
Yeah, it's true. Boring for you and boring for the guests, of course, but mostly I think for us, for the entertainers, we are the ones. If you feel you're getting bored with your own stuff, it's because the guests, they are bored long time ago.
Yeah. Veronica Ferriani, one of the Brazilian entertainers we had on this season, she said to me, if I'm getting bored, I know the audience must be getting bored as well, so it's definitely time to change.
That's for sure. No doubt about that, for sure.
For people listening to the singers that want to be working in this kind of environment, we know that they should try and incorporate some languages and that their act should appeal to as many people as possible. They need to connect with as many different demographics and nationalities as they can as early as possible in the show. What do you see common mistakes when if you see an act? Because do you watch all of the shows?
I try. I don't watch them every time, but at least once or twice.
If it's a new act, you'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
You watch the whole thing.
Yeah, let's say it's an act that's coming for one time only. I'll do whatever I can to watch because it's the only chance I have. And I have to make reports as well, although I rely on my stage and production manager to do that. I always like to see. If it's an act that is going to stay for a while, I like to watch if possible, the first performance, but we always have to give them some time to polish it up because it takes a few, performances to find the proper timing and, you know what I'm talking about. So
when you see an act, what do you see are the acts that don't do so well? What is it that do you see things which you think that's a common mistake or that's something that's often goes wrong? Or what would you like to say to acts that watch out for this?
By experience, the acts that really annoyed me to the point that I wanted to make a negative report and say don't send them ever back again to my ship is that I noticed that they really didn't do any research on to whom they were performing to. Meaning, I'm not saying that they need to, send emails a month before. I'm just saying, come on board and ask. Are there any Spanish-speaking guests tonight? Are there any? What's the demographics? What's the nationalities? Which type of? Just ask before you perform, so you can prepare at least a few lines to say to them, because that goes a long way, for sure, with them. That's one thing. Second thing, for example, we had, but then I think I don't know if it happens often. You can tell me better than that. But for example, people who come on board, let's say bands or singers, and they don't have the proper charts and the proper,
the musical arrangements for the band and the technical rider and all that stuff.
Yeah, and also sometimes they want to build the show during the tech run.
Right.
They don't have. They should have their show ready to
Prepared, ready to go.
Yeah, in their head. But no, they come on board, and when they're gonna go to rehearsal, they are still, making decisions. Of course, you can change things on the spot, especially because on cruise ships we have this limitation of time. The shows shouldn't last longer than 45, 50 minutes because of dinner seatings and activities. So of course you're allowed to make cuts and change things around. And if you have something planned, you come on board, you realize that your crowd is different from what you had expected. Of course, you're going to add something here and there. That's fine, and I think it's important that you do. But you're going to do this on top of something that you already had prepared before. And to me, for these guys, for the technical people and for the musicians, it's really annoying when they see that somebody's just not prepared. And it happens more often than we would like.
I see a lot of acts that don't seem to, they can be great singers, but they don't seem to have like a cohesive show. It's like a collection of songs and some sort of weak links in between the songs.
This is a very good point. Guests on cruise ship, their minds, first of all, they're kind of lost when they're on board because they're not on their regular environment. If they go to a theater or to a concert hall, whatever, they know where they are. They drove there, or whatever they got there. They know exactly where they are. When they're here, most of the times they don't know where they are. They're kind of lost, and they either just had dinner or they're hungry to go to dinner, and my excursions tomorrow. I have to wake up so early, so they're not really focused, like 100% focused on your show. Not to mention, as you said before, like the theater is open all the time, so people coming in, people going out. So that means that it's your responsibility as an entertainer to keep their attention at all times. And when you just, for example, sing a collection of songs without thinking about the dynamics of the show as a whole, beginning, middle, end, like a movie, that you have,
a shape and a journey. You're taking them on a journey.
Exactly. Why this song comes after this one? Why are you opening with this one? You should be asking yourself why you're doing this all the time, because then when you create this dynamic, that's when you get the people really entertained and they forget about everything else because they are, as you said, they're in this journey with you till the very end. So that's a very good point. And you're right. And I think when people who just put together this collection of songs, it's either they're being lazy or maybe they never thought about it,
Do you think for a singer, what they say is as important as the songs they sing, or less important or more important?
You need to know your limitations and you need to know what you're good at. If you can make a show that mixes little jokes and songs and little stories, introducing the songs in this certain way, I think is the best you can do. However, I've seen people trying to do that and boring the people so much that by the time they got to the song itself, they were not interested anymore. So you know what I'm saying? Like,
ideally, you'll be able to talk and tell a few jokes and maybe be funny as well as sing.
Showman.
But if you're aware that that's just something that you can't do and you'll never really be able to do, then just don't go there. Just try and do as well as you can by singing. Fantastic. As long as hopefully you've got a talent for singing. If you haven't got a talent for talking,
exactly. You have to focus on what you're good at, right? And but those things can be learned. There are techniques that you can learn from people. If you approach the cruise director and say, "Look, did you see my show? Yeah. What did you think? Any ideas?" I'm sure that every single one of us would start thinking, because I'm sure that when we were watching the show, we were thinking about it.
But do you think that, I know some acts would be nervous about doing that because if they haven't been working for a company very long, and if I hadn't met you before and I said, "Hey João, I don't know if you saw my show, but I'd love to hear your feedback and anything that you feel I could change," I'd be nervous that you would think, oh, this guy obviously is new, he doesn't really know what he's doing, and he might send a report saying, hey, this guy's okay, he's obviously new, maybe we'll give him some time to learn before we ask him. But could it backfire? Is it better for me just to pretend that,
I see what you mean, and it's a very good point, but I also think it depends on how you approach the cruise director. There's always a way, because this guy, the cruise director, he knows the ship better than anyone. He's been dealing with this product for a while. So if you just came on board, you could approach in a way saying, look, I've been doing the show for so long, for a certain period of time, always with great success. However, for your ship, is there anything that you think you should tell me that I should consider in order to, you know what I'm saying?
That's great, yeah.
You're just opening the door for the cruise director to have an input, that's all. I think it depends. Of course, you go there and say, hey, what do you think? Did I do well?
Yeah.
Then...
if you ask, as you've just described, then the cruise director is probably going to be flattered. We all like to be asked our opinion,
then
right?
they're going to keep talking.
Yeah.
Because you see, you only ask for a little feedback in regards to this ship. You didn't come across as insecure or anything, but just the same, you're going to get as much feedback as the cruise director is willing to give you.
Do you ever get
the door is like a Pandora?
Do you ever get acts like really sucking up to you as a cruise director? And because I know some acts that say, oh, look, all you've got to do, don't worry about the office and your agent. You just got to really make sure the cruise director loves you. Because if the cruise director loves you and he sends reports saying this guy's got to come back on my ship, so I know some acts that'll come on the ship and they'll be sort of trying to find the cruise director to buy him a drink and schmooze him and network and all that. Personally, I've never really done that. I just try and go on, do my job, and why are you smiling at me? When did I last buy you a drink? That was a long time ago. You wish. Personally, I kind of go on and do my job, and then hope that it stands on its own. But I mean, what do you find? Do you see a lot of acts trying to schmooze you, and does it work? Do I need to buy you drinks?
Oh, that's not going to hurt. No, honestly, that's a good question. The more professional the person is, and the better the show is, and the more experienced the person is, the less the person is going to be doing that, right?
So if an actor just comes on, does a great job, and the only time you see them is in the wings before or after the show, that's going to be perfect.
Because the cruise director, the cruise director has so much already on his plate that the less he has to deal with But of course, I'm not saying that they cannot be friends, and create, create a relationship. What I'm saying is, like, this is completely apart from the job.
Yes.
However, I have witnessed entertainers who are not that great, and I think in order for them to secure that they're gonna be on the ship and stuff like that, they think that if they, they're friends with the cruise director, that's gonna mean that, But on the other hand, the cruise director can go and say, hey, yeah, let's go have a beer, and then the guy buys the cruise director a beer, and he thinks he's buying the cruise director's approval, but at the same time, the cruise director can be making the very same report he would be making without any of that.
But with a free beer.
Yeah, included. So I don't think it's funny. I never thought about it, honestly. To me, as a cruise director, it's never happened.
I wanted to ask you how important ratings are, guest ratings for guest entertainers. We hear about ratings all the time. The guests get these questionnaires or comment cards at the end of a cruise. They fill them out. And we're always we entertainers are always kind of worried that we're going to get good ratings. How much does that matter? And how much influence do you, as the cruise director, have on whether an act will be hired or not? Or is it really just down to the booker in head office?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the last part of the question. We, as cruise directors, we send them reports at the end of each cruise, and like saying how was the reaction of the crowd, if the entertainer got standing ovations or not, if we make some comments every cruise. But also, at the end of the season, we usually send them our preferences. The entertainers that we like, the ones that we like the least, stuff like that. The ones we really like but don't think they are appropriate for that specific season, like I did with you. But what I'm saying is this: sometimes you like an act, but you know it's not appropriate for Brazilians, for example, or you know that it's going to work much better here or there. So you make those comments sometimes, and that doesn't happen very often. But sometimes they're going to do an official. How can I say that? They send the cruise directors an email and the list of all the entertainers. So, and if you have worked with any of those, you can give a rate from, let's say 1 to 5, something like that. They don't do that very often, but I've seen it happening. And we can make requests. We can say, oh, I'm coming on board for the Brazilian season. Can I request this entertainment or that one for next year, to give them time to prepare? But at the end of the day, we are not the ones who decide. We tell them our preferences, and Miami office will work with our preferences to try to accommodate if possible. But the ones who really decide are the schedulers in Miami, because they will take many things into consideration, like how much they're paying for those acts, flights that they need to pay, and lots of other things that we don't know about. That's the second part of the question. And by the way, I've seen cruise directors saying, I don't want to see this act again, and getting the act anyway. So you have an idea.
So there's some influence, but at the end of the day,
it depends on many of them.
Because, like you said, there are other people that see the big picture and have got to work to other needs as well.
Yeah. And of course, there are cruise directors who have more influence than other cruise directors. The more experienced the cruise director is, and then touching the first part of your question, the more successful in regards to the ratings the cruise director is, of course, the more weight his opinion has. Like if I'm very successful cruise director, I know what I'm doing, the Miami office trusts my judgment, of course they're gonna weigh my opinion better, so to speak, right? So that's one thing. In regards to the ratings, like if our goal is to please the guests and make sure they're happy with the product we're delivering, the only way for us to know that is if we hit target in our ratings. Because the guests, they're going to rate us poor, fair, good, or excellent. If I don't hit target on the ratings, that means that I didn't have enough excellent or good. I had too many poors or fairs, and that means that I'm not delivering the product properly.
How worried should an act be if he or she doesn't do well in the ratings?
The problem is this: if the cruise director identifies that we're not hitting the targets because of a specific act, he's going to probably, I would say, talk to the scheduler and say, look, this act's not working well here on this ship for the season.
Because you could see that you did well in, because every act and every show is reviewed, right? So is rated by the guests, so that you could do quite well or average with everything except one particular act that really dies and gets an averagely very poor rating, and that's going to stick out, right, and bring the whole thing down, and you're probably not going to want that act back.
Yeah, there's another way to identify that. It's through the guest comments, because if an act is really poor, it's very easy to identify, because the guests comment about it. They're going to say, oh, change that act. It's really... or if somebody, let's say, while performing makes a joke that offends people, they're always going to say. So, of course, there's room for improvement. You can always approach the entertainer and say, look, take a look at these comments. Do you think you can do anything about it? It's not very nice, or, But it depends. It really depends. Each case is a different case. Sometimes I've seen musicians who were simply poor musicians. So people who know music, they would say, look, this guy is a fake. Get rid of him. And just like that, And you have two options. You either ignore the guest comments, which I think is a mistake, because they're the ones giving you the signs, they're, you don't need to take the comments to the letter, but it's a very important tool for you because you can't be everywhere all the time, right? So you rely on the guest comments to also know what's going on. And although you need to be careful when analyzing those comments, you have very good clues of what's going on, and then you can go back to the entertainer and see if it's fixable. But sometimes just the only way to fix is to replace the entertainer.
Finally, tell me about general conduct on the ship. Do you find many acts act in an inappropriate way? Do you find that artists don't know how to behave on the ship and get into trouble? Does that happen very often and cause problems? What should an act bear in mind about just their general behavior on the ship?
That's a very, very good question, because it does happen quite often. We've been lucky here, because I don't think we've had any issues for the past couple of years, at least during the South American season. However, I've witnessed serious situations. For example, we have a very strict policy in regards to guest interaction, right? Crew members are not allowed to interact with guests in a more personal way, if you know what I mean, right? Entertainers they have guest status in most of the ships and most of the cases. However, they do represent the company. They are an act hired by Royal Caribbean in this case, and the policy that I just mentioned in this case applies to the guest entertainers as well, because if anything happens and a guest comes back to the company with a complaint, which can become a criminal complaint, or you can sue the company or stuff like that, there's liability, because you were here because we hired you to be here, and now you are, inappropriately interacting with the guests. So this is zero tolerance. Like our company has zero tolerance for situations like this. So we already had a few entertainers fired overnight because of that. Sometimes alcohol is also a problem. Entertainers who abuse of alcohol and then they embarrass themselves in front of guests, and of course there's nothing else we can do but also to let them go. So guest inappropriate interaction is one. Alcohol abuse is another one. Also paperwork. Sometimes they come on board without the proper paperwork, for example medical documents or passports or stuff like that, and we have to let them go.
Visas, I think is a common problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I learned a long time ago to really read my paperwork properly, see what I need, because it does happen that a guest entertainer will get to the airport and not be allowed to fly because they haven't got the right visa for wherever they're going. And it happens a lot, doesn't it?
It happens more often than we would like to, and at the end of the day, honestly, it's your responsibility to check all that, because you can say, oh, but my agent never told me. Yeah, but now you're the one without a job, so what, doesn't matter whose fault was that. It's your responsibility to check, to double check, triple check, read your papers, get informed, ask questions, and at least and have the peace of mind that at least from your side you did everything you could.
And punctuality is important as well, of course, when getting to a ship. There's a guest entertainer that's just lost track of time or didn't check the time that the ship's going to leave that day, and they assume it's going to be 5 p.m. or something, but it happens to be leaving at 3:30.
Yeah, that could be a big problem, and it creates such a... It's terrible for the ship, because then we need to land the person's passport. The port agent will be waiting for the person, and then the person will have to pay for their own ticket to reach the ship the next port, and he or she better have a very, very, very good excuse, and like a police report of some sorts, or a medical report of some sorts, because otherwise, most likely, the person's going to be going home the next day. And I've seen cruise directors trying to do anything they could to keep them on board. However, if we open the door for one, then.
Hey, it's been great talking to you. Thank you for that. I think there's a lot there to help people that have never been on a ship before, or been on a little bit and wonder what it's like.
I think it's a great, great experience. You get to see so many different places. You get to meet people from all over the world. You get to, honestly, your knowledge of people and the things we get to see, the things we get to experience, I don't think there's any other way to do it.
And we're getting paid.
We're getting paid, yeah?
It's a good job.
Yeah.
Thanks for talking to us.
Sure, of course. It was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this Cabaret Secrets podcast. If you've got any comments or questions, please visit cabaretsecrets.com, where you'll also find details of the Cabaret Secrets book, an indispensable guide on how to create your own show, travel the world, and get paid to do what you love.